our letter dated 20th October, we submitted an urgent request for consideration of supplementary schedule 3 as follows. 1. The Office of the Prime Minister, 2 billion for funding of integrated intelligence computer system. The integrated computer system is the output of a research that was funded from 2010 to 2014 under the presidential support to scientists to study and find solutions to some of the challenges affecting service delivery in the health sector. It is a comprehensive end-to-end system handling patient life cycle as well as other critical administrative functions of the hospital, namely the human resource and inventories. The system has been very successful and realized evident benefits, namely paperless experience, reduced absenteeism, efficiency in medical personnel while handling patients, improved patient's experience, very significant reduction, and expiry of medicines, among others. Funding is therefore needed for introduction of biometric inpatient registration and dispensing of medicine, improvement of patient experience, linking national medical stores and the financial intelligence system, and operationalize expenses, including wages. The second request that we received from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was 1 billion for establishment of an embassy of Uganda in Angola. The fundamental reason for opening Uganda embassy in Angola is for security and for other bilateral relations. Angola is a member of the International Conference on Great Lakes region that has been coordinating the fight against negative forces, that's the ADF, M23, etc. in the region. Additionally, Angola has been a key mediator in the mending operations between Uganda and Rwanda. Opening the mission will deepen political, trade, educational, and cultural relations between the two countries. The third, and the absence of this direct diplomatic presence in a country of interest poses a serious obstacle to successful pursuit of foreign policy goals. While the now globalized world is increasingly interdependent, supported by advances in information and communication technologies, it's important to note that the competition for access to foreign markets and resources persists. Absence of people on the ground in foreign places of interest constrains accurate assessment of existing opportunities, risks, and local developments. The fourth item is from the Ministry of Finance of 5 billion for implementing the electronic e-government e-procurement system. Implementation of the e-procurement system commenced in July 2020 and will support government to carry out complete public procurement and disposal of processes electronically. The benefits of EGP system are promotion of bidder participation and competitiveness, real-time access to procurement information for planning, reduced cost of doing business, improved governance and accountability in public procurement, effective oversight through monitoring, minimal human interaction, reducing avenues for corruption. The fifth one was the Ministry of Lands and Urban Development. That is 6 billion to cater for compensation for the Archdiocese of Kampala for land at Zambia for construction of Outer Modern Convention Center. The supplement of 6 billion is to facilitate partial payment for acquisition of 20 acres of land owned by Kampala Archdiocese and occupied by the Uganda Police Barracks at Zambia. The land was valued at 64 billion, of which 1.2 billion has so far been paid. The Ministry of Education and Sports, 336.86 billion for purchase of 900 million radios to all Ugandan households. Providing radios to homesteads is one of the strategies to support long-term distance learning. Given the schools are closed due to COVID pandemic, except for candidates classes and the pandemic, the numbers seem to continue increasing, and therefore the return of the schools are still open, but also is another tool to continue giving knowledge to our children who are seated at home to save this generation of people who could be fed with other things. Number 7 is the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, 3 billion for support of UBC. The fund will go towards 1, preparation and participation in the 2020-2021 general election, especially given that we are using scientific approach. So it's the only station that candidates can actually claim to use, because other stations are private. So this is the only window that government can facilitate fairly to all candidates who are participating in elections. And the coverage and the technical people will be adding on what they want to do. The demand is so big, but we thought that this could start off the process and cater for the key issues in that sector. Support for relevant local content development, programming, and dissemination for broadcasting of international and national days, special presidential initiative and enrollment projects, public press conferences, political celebrations, plus key sectors, etc. COVID-19 continuous awareness creation and sensitization broadcasting programs and education programs. So, honorable members, the supplementary expenditure will be funded from additional borrowing, which is currently before Parliament, and any additional revenue. Chairperson, before you came in, we had a debate about OO's petition at the Secretariat, where he never indicated what he wanted the tribunal to say. So they said, well, we have seen your facts, but you never asked us to overturn the results of the other person. So I also want to not go into the similar category. The purpose of me being here is actually to request you to approve this supplementary. I thank you.
Well, thank you so much. For the brief presentation. One thing you need to clarify, begin with is to explain the source of funding, because on the floor of Parliament, the request you presented, you indicated that the purpose of that loan was to fund shortfalls in the budget. So you were actually talking about money that we already appropriated, for which you had the shortfalls. So we did not envisage that this one was also going to be covered by that loan. Was that explicitly indicated?
Yeah, in the request to borrow the 4.4 trillion and 600 million US dollars from IMF, we indicated that it was to cater for two things. The first one is the revenue shortfall. The second is additional pressures during the financial year.
Okay. Now the second one is about this office of the Prime Minister, the 2 billion, this computer system. Where is this going to be domiciled? because when you read the details, it's largely in the health sector. So why is it appearing under Office of the Prime Minister? And you mentioned that the system has been very successful. I thought it is a new system. Has it been tried? So what is the basis of that statement? I cannot understand you. And you need to come out very clearly on what the benefits are. Yes, it is going to help in dispensing medicines. But what about the medicine being stolen? Are we going to save the government from this medicine that is being stolen from time to time from various smaller clinics? And is integration going to happen at all levels of health centers? Because you know we have HC2, HC3, HC4 general hospitals up to the national referral hospitals. So to what extent is the integration going to be? Because if it is not full coverage, we can continue to experience leakages in the system. But I want to be also convinced that the system actually deals with the stealing of medicine, if at all, and how that is going to be done. Then, Minister of Finance, procurement. You say this is commenced in July 2020. So it means that this one was foreseen.
Procedure, Chair.
Yes?
What is the quorum for committee meetings? What is the quorum for committee meetings?
Yeah, for the COVID meetings.
For the committee, not COVID.
Sorry, I'm saying what is the quorum for committee
Yeah, it's 1/3, I think. So it's 1/3, but you need it during voting. That's when you will need that one.
Excuse me, clarify this. I need some clarification. When we are signing the report, does that reflect like voting? Because when we are signing,
Yeah, you need at least 10
so
signatures.
if now we are sitting
Actually,
to
5.
approve what is going to
It
be
is 5.
signed, 4. But a
Okay,
third
it is
of
5.
people, does it sure? Are we sure that a third people will get convinced after 3 of us are passed together?
The COVID seems to
Sorry.
the COVID thing by speakers.
How are we going to convince the other 5 who are going to be?
Maybe chair we can say, unless we say chair that for now we receive
And make comments.
and make preliminary comments because I have preliminary issues first even before we start scrutinizing the things. But anyway,
Yeah, and that was what I was doing.
Okay.
Exactly. So, let me
I'm
exhaust.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Speakers ruling on
Mr. Chairman, please,
What does
I'm
it-
begging for your forgiveness if I'm becoming a nuisance. Mr. Chairman, the issue of the budget has become quite sensitive, so therefore, as a committee, we should ensure that we operate really strictly within the rules so that nobody can challenge our decisions. So that's why I'm raising a simple thing. Do we qualify to give our opinion on the document we're discussing now? Or are we just casually chatting over the document and then we'll have a formal meeting later or something like that? Let's be legalistic about this. I raised it casually. I thought you would take it seriously, but it looks as if since nothing serious came out of my statement, that's why I'm trying to make an emphasis, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to remind you that the Speaker's ruling on quorum still stands because he has not retracted those rules. Yes.
which is, can I have the number?
The What was the
What is
number?
the number?
It was 5.
It should be 5.
Yes. And we are now already 6.
It's even, I can get a copy.
Let's make ready. We're gonna get the answer.
No, Clark, I think let's not stress this thing. The quorum remains, but it is you had otherwise corrected that is needed at the point of voting or taking a decision also. For now, we're not taking a decision. For now, we are receiving and exchanging ideas. So the issue of the quorum may not arise right now. We can still proceed and receive the presentation of the minister and the technical team. However, when it comes to taking a decision, that's when the issue of quorum comes into. That's what our rules say. I have it here. That's what our rules say. So there is nothing we breach now. We are not taking a decision as we speak now. We are just receiving. So, Chair, I don't think there is anything which can stop us from receiving or proceeding with this meeting. It's only when we are taking a decision of voting, that's when we need a what? A quorum.
So let's hope that the clerk will not send us messages to come and sign as he did last time.
We'll discuss later.
Let's hope. Let's put it on record, please.
No, I think what we do, we call a meeting, a committee meeting, and in that meeting that we present a report and vote on issues. That's what we do normally.
No, I think, Chair, maybe what Honorable Cicero is trying to say
No, I know how to speak English.
is that
What I know how to speak English, so don't translate for me. What I meant was, last time, after a meeting, like after receiving the document like this, the clerk sent us a message to say, come and sign. And yet we have not had a formal committee meeting. So I'm saying, if that was a mistake, can we bury it in the committee so that nobody resurrects it? Because it can be resurrected and we can be challenged for the decisions that we made and took to Parliament. So I wanted us to note that we did it in error. I didn't want to embarrass the committee, but this time round, can the committee chairman be guided properly, knowing that this particular committee is being watched very carefully. So we need to know how we work. We should work within the realm of the law. Thank you.
Well, that is noted, but my instruction to the clerk was to say that the meeting was supposed to convene was to consider and sign. Consider and sign. So the word consider, I think, means a lot there. It means you can reject to sign. So,
But Chair, another clarification we could have is if we are meeting to consider, it's the deliberations on that meeting that will be brought in the report, that will be discussed to confirm whether the true thing that they said or not.
Yeah.
So in this case, if we're just going to check custody on this, we should convene another meeting where proper deliberations will be conducted, a report originated, and a later will come and deliberate.
Yeah, I think, Chair, that is, I also want to add my voice on this. It's true that we need another session to consider before we write a draft report. Because
but then what will you be considering?
the presentation, the issues of the presentation.
We are now looking at the presentation.
No, but Chair, I thought we have agreed that we receive now. We can talk because.
Receiving means that you are not commenting.
We can comment after the minister is gone.
No, but
Well,
is there,
Chair, there are two things. Yeah, there are two things. Seeking clarifications from the minister and the team does not mean we are considering. We can seek clarifications. We can raise issues that we think would guide us in. Even when you go to court, even the judge asks you questions. Doesn't mean he's now writing judgment. But those questions he's asking you will help when now considering the matter. So we can still raise questions. Okay. We can still raise questions and ask.
okay. So now I was raising those same questions. Minister of Finance, e-procurement, and you are saying this system implementation started in July 2020. The assumption is that you had the money before you started implementation. I want you to clarify whether I'm right or wrong. Otherwise, implementation should not have started if you did not have the money. Now, then finally, on the Ministry of Lands, if I have not forgotten, I remember this committee considering this request and forwarding this request on the floor of Parliament. What happened to that approval? Did you not pay that money for this Nsambia land? Do you remember, members? There was something like this.
Can I clarify?
Clarify. But is it you to clarify?
I wrote the report.
No.
The chair, unfortunately, it appears there's nobody from that docket.
But he's here. He's representing them.
But the technical person,
Yes, so those are the issues from me.
But chair, I have my preliminary one. I have looked at the minister's presentation, but the minister has not, yes, he has addressed himself on the substance, but he has not addressed himself on the question of the law. On the question of the law. We normally begin by quoting the law, but the minister has not addressed himself on the question of the law. First of all, in each of these items, the minister has not convinced us. Yes, you have given this present. These are what you need. Yes, they may look good because I'm not subjecting myself to the gist of the matter. But for now, there are some parameters that these requests must meet. That is, are they unavoidable? You even raised that these guys, they knew they were starting a project in July 2020. So were they unforeseeable? Because that's the first point. What compels the minister to come now, when you have got, this morning I was very enraged, you have Paco over there that sits and scrutinizes all these things. You have got a whole cabinet which sits and scrutinizes, begins with this thing. You have a whole department, the Ministry of Finance, that scrutinizes this. The budget process is so elaborate. So what is it that now, how does the minister address himself to the issue of the law? How comes you are bringing this thing? The chairman has just raised this issue of July 2020 on the issue of EGP, whatever, e-government something, e-government procurement. So can you first address yourself on the issue of the law? Yes, on the substance, we thank you for the presentation, but you are silent on issues of the law, and you're the custodian. Chair, before we even subject ourselves to the real issues.
I think, Chair, the way we have done it in the past, we take item by item and explain the urgency. But most of all these things that were put across are really fit within the law. For example, if you see the establishment of an embassy in Angola.
That's okay.
An embassy in Angola. It's extremely very urgent because, as I've explained, Angola has been at the center of spying with the regions. It has been at the center of mediating the two countries. So to continue operating without on-ground office is extremely not helping that. So it's very critical. If you look at the Ministry of Lands.
Procedure, Speaker. Speaker,
Deputy Chair.
Procedure, Chair. Maybe you will soon become the Speaker, I don't know. Speaker, I'm raising a procedural matter. This particular sitting now, I think the conversation we have had in the last couple of minutes has been based on the issue of the law. The law, not the importance of the subject, the urgency of the subject. Whatever is the importance of the subject, are we raising it in compliance with the law? But the way the minister is explaining, we agree. Some of us are so emotional about the establishment of the foreign missions. Some of us are so concerned about the dilapidating state of some of our foreign missions. But are we within the law? Were these issues not foreseeable? Were they not foreseeable? Why were they not budgeted for? We got past the budget the other day, Mr. Chairman. So can the minister help us on the issue of the law? Secondly, can the minister also, again within the law, we are agreed that what is the source of funding? If it is a way of suppressing one agency in order to supply the other agency, we need to have a look at the means of the agreement between the two sectors. And that again is a matter of the law. And we have talked about this, we argued about this, even the Attorney General had to put his opinion down to guide us. And the minister is aware of all this. And Mr. Chairman, it took us 7 years for the Attorney General to write that opinion. If you remember, it was the center of our disagreement every year until the current Attorney General said that. So, can the minister now please help us? Because we want to help you. So you help us on the issue of the law, and we finish this quickly, and we go.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to explain on the issue of the source of funding. We have stated at the back of the presentation. It's coming from domestic borrowing and extra revenue. And the domestic borrowing is already before the Committee of National Economy being processed in the House. So that is the source. So there is no suppression. If it was suppression, then we would be outside the law. The issue of the whether, because there are two guiding principles for supplementary. The first one is was it
Foreseeable.
foreseeable? No,
Unforeseeable.
it is either stated properly.
I have it in my head.
It is either unforeseeable or unavoidable. No, there are only two. You amended them. No, there are two. You amended them. Was it foreseeable or unavoidable?
Unavoidable, yes.
Let's now look at
Source of funding.
the source of funding. We are finished. Let's look at, for example, let's look at UBC. Can we avoid this expenditure? No, because we need to facilitate our presidential candidates. We must be fair to all the presidential candidates, and they must appear on television because that's the scientific way of campaigning. Yes, so that's unavoidable. So already, you can see it is already stated. The issue of education, the radios, we have our children who are at home, who have opened already for candidate classes. We do not know how long the COVID will take, and these children must be they must continue with the distance learning. So can we avoid that? No, we can't avoid it. You have over 14 million children at home. We must provide information and knowledge to these children at the airport, at home. So that is that. Now the issue of lands and housing.
Yeah. On that, on availability of education.
Education, are you please?
No.
Finish. That's it. That's it.
Radios.
Now they're talking about radio.
Radios.
The radio is already.
We're talking about
the mask.
UBC.
We haven't even received it. We haven't even received a mask.
Radios.
Yeah, I thought should have been procedure right for us to put issues to the minister. And then he comes
Yeah.
with a written submission.
Correct.
For example, highlighting each of these items, radio and how it is unavoidable and unforeseen, ICT how it is unavoidable, plus any other issue that has been raised together, so that it becomes the record as a basis for our interaction.
Yeah, but it's here, you can first respond and then write.
Okay,
And
then
then, if you are open to
Chair.
discussion, you can as well discuss other issues related.
Yeah, it's open for
Okay,
it to
okay, Chair, now on that unavoidability of no, you children in school, we don't know when they will open, on that radio thing.
Was it that UBC?
No, I had finished the
UBC
UBC.
was on radio.
I was on radio.
Yes.
On radio?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Chair, it's unfortunate the Minister of Education is not here. Who? Chair, we need to have introduction, maybe that's the problem.
And who is it? On the three,
Can you introduce yourself?
who is this one?
Let him introduce.
Good afternoon, members. I am Derek Kamisi, acting Secretary for the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Council to support 350 million.
Okay, Chair, this is acting economist. And,
So the minister is
Chair, there was a roadmap that was given the country, educational roadmap, and this thing was adopted by cabinet. And to the best of what they gave us, all schools will be back by March. All students will be back to school by March next year. Now, if all schools are going to be back to school by next year, that means the non-candidate classes are only at home between now and February, and these are months of campaigns, political campaigns. We are already asking for money to air political programs. Now, Chair, do we need to spend 350 billion for just 2 months? Because really, because the minister says it's unavoidable. Can we avoid spending money these 250? Even the children are going back to school. There's a report in yesterday's papers by the ministry saying that actually the teachers have learned that there was no learning taking place during the other previous months. And it is going to be worse now that we are going to a political campaign season of 2 months. Now, do we need to spend money, 350 billion on 2 months in buying radios? We could spend this money on supporting the schools. Already, government schools are failing to open. Now, that's why I'm asking you, that you know very well that the government has released a calendar on when children are going back, and for you now telling us you don't know. But it's the same government you are serving, releasing a calendar when all children are going back. Yes.
Some information, Chair.
Yes.
Information I want to give to other members. When you are opening schools, you release 72 billion. And we know opening schools was very, very important. You release only 72 billion. But radios, you're already asking for a supplemental of 350. Compare the two and see which was more important than the other.
So, Chair, in the context that the date of going back, children going back is known, and it's only 2 months, a span of 2 months, which 2 months are dominated by political activities. Is the minister really maintaining that this expenditure is unavoidable? When you know we can avoid it just 2 months?
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, the issue under the minister, okay, I know there were other statements, there was some misconnections between the office and the State House. But the issue of children, a person will have children at home, young children at home.
Even me.
All of us have children at home.
Yeah, even me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have grandchildren.
No, even children.
Even children.
I've not read my off layers.
I that is still available.
I tell you.
Okay, yeah, please, you're fine.
It is true, the timetable has been released. The issue of distant learning, if you understand some of the things that we are learning through this COVID pandemic, that we can never continue to do things the same way. Yes, the timetable is there, but it's not fixed because the situation of COVID, we do not know how it is going to come out. To keep children at home without receiving any knowledge, any information that is already planned by an authorized institution is really dangerous for children. It's dangerous for children. I have children at home who are doing online learning. Others have distance learning. One of the reasons why some of them do not study because they lack the channels. So this is not going to be for only 2 months. This radio is an asset to a home state. It's going to be used for actually to improve now the way we are learning at school. Even when we have this asset, it's a new innovation that people will even use even when things stabilize. But the Minister of Education will be able to give more information about it.
Yeah, but let's seek a clarification. Yes. A clarification, Honorable Minister, I would seek from you is that the country was locked around March, and children were sent home. Immediately, even in the house, we started thinking of ways of enabling these learners to proceed with their study, because we were not aware of when the schools would open. All of us were in support of these radios and we debated it. You never brought the supplementary on radios because the budget has already been worked on. You never brought the supplementary. No, the budgeting process was almost nearing an end. You never brought the supplementary. But why is it that now that the roadmap for the opening of the schools has come and part of the learners are already in the school, you are adding to buy what? Radios. Why was it not important? Why was it not a hurry at that time when we were not sure? And now it's a hurry when we are quite sure.
Chair, I think this issue of distance learning needs a comprehensive presentation by the Minister of Education to show you the strategy they have, where they are coming from, because there are steps that have been taken to keep our children learning at home. They have made some progress, they have made some challenges, but the issue of radios is very, very, very important, that every household gets this asset and will continue this learning. But the Minister of Education will be able to interact with the committee and give more information.
Chair, Honourable Minister, what Charles has asked is a simple question. The children have been home since March. This is September.
But he understood the question.
He has not.
And he has no answer.
He has no answer.
He has no answer, and he has referred it to the Ministry of Education.
I know I have given you my answer, that you say the children have, we started in March. And you remember, March up to May, the Ministry of Education was using distance learning through educational materials. Okay? At one stage in the month of May, we started thinking about other methods of providing information. We started about the TV, we discussed about the radio, we discussed about even telephone, the iPhones, and until government zeroed down on the radios. So they have been making some progress on this, because none of us knew how it would turn until we made a decision that let's go for radio. But as I said, the issue of distance learning is a subject that Minister of Education can give a comprehensive statement, and you learn how actually they are looking at it.
But in the meantime, which channel are you intending to use? Because I'm from Kayunga, I cannot get UBC, I can't get this normal channel in Kampala, you know? I can only receive the local channel.
So they have mapped out the whole country there, I think the coverage of UBC and the deputy MD is here. Out of the 135 districts, they are covering almost 90%. And where, yes, the UBC.
They cannot cover Kayunga.
No.
That's 40 miles out.
They can explain. And where there is no coverage by UBC, they are working out a partnership with the private radios cover the remaining part. But you can mention something on the subject.
Chair, to be honest, UBC man. I think the issue is not about UBC. The issue is about, this is just about strategic issues for now. We are saying that what is the hurry, that you have a short time for children to go back to school. Why are you now rushing to buy a radio when the children are going back to school? That is the issue. It doesn't matter how they go to the same day. You don't care about that. The issue is a strategic one. Why is it that when children are going back to school, you already have a roadmap, and the country knows that the children are going back to school in March? Why are you now buying a radio for 4 months? Of course, the 4 months, the 2 months are political months. You are telling us UBC is going to be airing political programs, political speeches, political things, scientific campaigns, and then you are telling us that I am listening to President Museveni, candidate Museveni, and then someone is also telling about biology. It doesn't make sense. So the month available from now, you have got February and the March, which are only 2 months.
Anyway, for me, the decision that is known to me, and the decision that is known to me on the return to school is a return of the candidate classes. Yes, there is a return of the candidate classes. It's a return of the, that's why we have taken a decision and we said let's watch how the situation will be improving. We have not said the classes are going back in March. No. It is where? Who is it?
You issue the roadmap, the program.
The issue that we have reached, the officer from education can answer that.
No, it's not the right person because by virtue of his position, he is from a wrong department. He should be from planning maybe. He's an economist, not so assistant, he said so. So I think we need somebody from the other relevant department.
But I wanted you not to give information to this committee as if it's authoritative. Because the match you're talking about, most likely you're talking about the exams for the candidates who are sitting now. So it's important we get the proper information.
No, Minister, I don't sit in cabinet meetings. I am not part of the executive. And once the executive issues a guideline, a roadmap to the country, and then a member of the same cabinet comes and starts distancing himself, then there is a big problem for this country. There is. So what we are saying, all these things are coming from the executive. And in any case, you know, I don't even know why your fears are there. Because when we closed school, there was only a single case of COVID. Now we have several deaths, but there's also vaccine. People, we are now relaxing SOPs. So why are you even worried? Things are getting better. We are praying for this country.
No, but of course you might have a different opinion. But maybe let's get facts the way they are. You cannot say you have a roadmap. Do you have a roadmap? Can you come and tell us? Yeah, when are the schools going back? Use this one.
You can pull your chair so that you're comfortable.
Chair, before he does that, let him introduce himself and tell us why he is as himself here and his level.
Chair, we are supposed to be having him as the PS of the minister.
Let him say why he's here, how he's here as himself.
I have received information. There is a meeting at the State House where there is the minister and the PS. And as I said, we are going to arrange of education. And as I said, we can arrange another meeting for this, but the PS has sent me.
Good afternoon, honorable members. I'll apologize for coming late, but it was on short notice because today we had the launch of Paper 4 roadmap, and then from there,
Which roadmap?
Jacob,
You
yeah.
not ended that need.
When we are back here,
Yeah.
The chair is open.
Yes, the minister is a member.
I am begging, someone has told to come. Maybe let me introduce myself once again. I'm Derek Namisi, acting principal economist, and I work with planning department. And currently, I deal with I head the budgeting section. I also happen to be a member of the radio committee, which was formulated to do the procurement of 9 million radios. 5 million locally manufactured, locally assembled, and 4 million imported. Honorable members, you will all agree with me that when COVID came, there were so many things which were not anticipated at all. That would explain, because members are asking why wasn't the issue of radios thought about initially. I wanted to highlight about three interventions that government undertook when COVID came. One was the procurement of running materials at home. But that was only done to 25%, and we use newspapers. So many methods have been employed, but have they been the most effective? I think that's a debate for another day. But we explored and went on to the TV, and the views we got were also known. The thing I wanted to say is, long distance learning is not going to go away even when classes resume. It is not something that we shall discuss even when classes resume. Yes. So when it came to the roadmap, it was agreed that we are going to start with candidate classes. And after a period of 2 months, we review and see the impact. Then we shall go ahead and allow the other classes. That's why yesterday you heard that that term was revised for candidates. That's why I was begging for the next available opportunity. We shall formally present the revised roadmap for both starting and also the other classes participating. That's what was agreed.
Clarification. Can I get a clarification?
So, Honorable Mungo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I thank you. I will have a number of issues where I need clarification.
Let's deal with education.
Yes, the radios, I'm also on radio. He has just told us that it was decided that when children go back to school, after 2 months there will be a review. That's what you have said. Now 2 months passed. After 2 months there will be a review to see when, if these other classes should also do what? Follow suit. Whether they should open up for others. So it will take every 2 months for them to reach a conclusion that maybe it is now fair enough for us to open up schools and the children go back to school. That time is not yet there. It has not yet passed. 2, Mr. Chairman, if somebody is talking about assembling radios here, 5 million radios assembling them here, we know how much time we took, and we are still taking to acquire the masks to distribute to the what? The banks. Yes, the masks.
Locally made.
To distribute these things to the communities.
Locally made.
But now we are talking about 5 million radios to be assembled here. After how long, what period is it going to take for this country to get 5 million radios done? But, Mr. Chairman, that's it. There have been several attempts, like I said. There was saturation of reading material through districts and so on and so forth. And you agree with me as somebody in planning and whatever that it was a failure, it failed. Mr. Chairman, all other attempts where it has involved government distributing, that is, talk about food, 2 districts, we failed. Masks, which cost much less than which actually just maybe less than a dollar, we failed. We are talking distribution of reading papers, reading materials to the children, it failed. Now we are jumping on to distributing radios. I think let us not mistake this country for right. we at once be serious and say we are actually simply messing up this country. Are you really convinced that what we are doing here, if you are really a serious citizen, that what we are doing is worthy to be done and to commit almost 400 billion shillings for these radios which might not come and which might come after years? Thank you, sir.
I want to give him information. The information I wanted to give my colleague. I want to give us the time because they said this is an urgent. Can assembling 5 million radios take us 2 weeks? And the radios are delivered to the people. 5 million assembled locally. How long will it take? This is an urgent. You want money urgent and you want radios urgent. You already have an assembly plant here where you will do the assembling of radios. And how long will it take you to assemble the radios? If just the importing and the procurement process is not going to catch up with so-called agents of yours, what is your motive? In fact, Chair, I have seen this guy has a lot of information. He's also one of the dealmen in the radio system because he's completely aware of what is on the radio. Let him deal with the issue of radio.
He started by telling us a lie, which he didn't apologize for. Because he told us a lie that he was attending PACOP meeting, which was not true. He even failed to substantiate that indeed it went on up to 2 o'clock. So he should not even apologize. He started from a point of telling lies.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, before Mr. Honorable Sassi comes in, to what extent are we going to continue pampering the population? I hope you understand my question. Are we now running a welfare state? Yes, Honorable Sassi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, whereas I share similar concerns, and whereas I'm not convinced about this expenditure on radios, from his explanation, it appears as if they are already somewhere in this process. They have already identified the supply, both internally and externally. They have already agreed on the quality issues and all other things, as if they are waiting for money to proceed. So the question is, what do we do in the circumstances? I would like him to respond to that.
I hope he's right in the question. I hope he's right in the motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad the technical person from the Ministry of Education apologized to the committee. However, he did not clarify whether he is the only technical person in the ministry, and if so, that's one area that we need to look into, because it's extremely dangerous that we have one officer who moves with the offices of the state in his briefcase. That's a very serious matter, Mr. Chairman, and we can't laugh about it, because it was required in a very important meeting, it was required in the budget meeting, and I'm sure there were other state duties that required him, but he's one person who moves with the power in his briefcase. That's a very serious matter, and I need an answer. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, I was trying to look for a letter which the Minister of Finance wrote to the Speaker. You recall very well that letter, Mr. Chairman. The Minister wrote to the Speaker to say that since the Budget Committee was already winding up or had already wound up discussions on Schedule 2, therefore, what the Minister of Finance had wanted the committee to consider as addendum would now be withdrawn and retabled. Which means, really, Mr. Chairman, if the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Education would have any little respect for this committee, I think they ought to have brought to our attention the urgency, as justified by your arguments and the minister, that we have this urgency, and knowing that education is very critical in driving this economy, the society, and everybody, the parents, the public are concerned about children staying at home with all the social mess that we're experiencing now. You are now just waking up to say, sorry, we have been keeping this urgency, but now we want to run with it and we want you to do it quickly. And yet you have been having that problem on your desk. As a technical person, you are already analyzing the technical aspect of that project of 9 million radios. But you kept it on your desk until this committee finalized its work, its discussion on Schedule 2. Then you came running. And the addendum was withdrawn, and now Schedule 3 has been tabled. Which means, Mr. Chairman, if there was any urgency, as urgent as articulated by both the minister and the technical person, who is too busy for us even, these matters should have been one of the priorities for us to consider in Schedule 2. And I'm surprised it had to come now at the tail end of the entire process. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to say, I consider it more or less looking at it from a different dimension, that somebody is trying to do some smart business on Uganda. That has happened before. This committee with a clean heart passed 85 billion for the purchase of food for the whole of Uganda. It was all turned for food in Kampala and Wakiso. This committee passed money for masks for all the adult Ugandans. Up to now, affairs come from Dokoro this morning, we don't have masks. Nowhere has the government mask been distributed in Dokoro. And all these months, the mask which is being produced in Uganda has not arrived to the beneficiaries. And how can we be convinced that what, Mr. Chairman, you are receiving now really is genuine? I feel somebody is taking us for a ride, and they can now justify that this is just a committee for rather stamping whatever government wants. And if that's the case, I would not want to be a party. But definitely, there is lack of integrity and truth in what I've received on the issue of radio. Thank you.
Maybe we get answers to the questions.
Chair,
We can get another round of questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, there is something we understand. Mr. Chairman, can the minister tell us what happens if we don't pass the 336 billion? I want to know the implications.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair, you might not get the comprehensive view over this matter until you are actually being presented on the strategy of e-learning, distance learning by the Ministry of Education. So I wanted to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you allow time for the Minister of Education come to the committee and explain what work they are doing in terms of the distance learning. Because Honorable Mr. Sizik, one of the things from my own experience, but I know Minister of Education would say something else, and the principal economist explained to us that actually distance learning and the purchase of radio should be seen not only in the short term of 2 months,
but in the long run of the Ministry of Education, preparing and getting ready for whatever circumstance will come now and in the future. But what I know from my opinion is that if we don't do anything about the children at home, the children that are staying at home, if they are not in touch with an authorized institution to give them knowledge, to give them education, then there's something wrong that's going to happen to the generation of these children. Spending a year or more at home without interaction is a problem. But my request to you and to the members is that on this particular one, let us allow the Minister of Education to come and make a presentation on distance learning, because this is done in the context of COVID and education, so that we make a decision, we make an informed decision after you have put a proper presentation. That's my procedure. And I think it was also, procedure. I had requested you, Chair, I requested you and the clerk to inform the technical, rather the secretary to come and present, because they make a better presentation, and if there are any questions, they answer. So it would be better to have more study for us.
Yeah, but remember, it's possible we are roasting the wrong person. Why don't we get the minister herself?
No, Chair, no.
Are we not roasting the wrong person?
No, Chair, the mandate of this committee is known. The mandate of this committee is known. It's a constitutional mandate.
There is no question about it.
Yeah, no, Chair.
Is this the right target?
Chair, even what the minister is saying is not appropriate. That explanation of the concept, you will take it to the sectoral committee. You will take it to them. They have the time to scrutinize, understand the workings of the committee. Because for us here, we are dealing with the resource, the money. So there is no way, we don't care whether it is a good thing, it's not. So long as we are going to deal with the cost of it. So, Chair, I will not buy the idea of the minister saying they should come and election to us. We don't need election. That election, take it to the sectoral committee. Here we are dealing with the money. Come and justify, answer the question we ask from you. Tell us, for instance. Yes. Tell us, for instance, what are you buying? For instance, Chair. These fellows are telling us they want money. We don't know what they want to buy. What are they buying? Are they buying radios? Are they buying even batteries? And if they're buying batteries, for how long? Because which kind of radios are these? Because it is useless to buy a radio without battery, without cells. You just don't have power. So it's a question about Chair. We should not be deceived that we need a lecture. We don't need a lecture. We are out money here. And secondly, Chair, these fellows should come with a work plan. You see, a supplement to the revision of budget. We must know, because what I have seen, Chair, yes.
We agreed at the beginning that we are not taking a decision in this meeting.
No, we are not taking.
We are looking for information.
But you must tell them. No, but what has been happening, Chair, what has been happening, I have seen government is using these supplementaries as a way of resource drain. What happens is that you will only see that when it comes to release, they all against they are going to release of 110%. Oh, the budget has performed by more than 100%, and the reason for it, there was a supplementary. What does that mean? That is not catered for. There's no activity, there's no planned activity. You are just throwing away money for people to can misuse. Yet come as better priority. Chair, no.
Chair, Mr. Chairman.
Switch on your microphone.
So, the Chairman, for me, I really sympathize with the budget committee, but at the same time, I'd like us to see the enemy we are facing. There's no flat rate, and everybody's trying to find any strategy using any tactics that we can combat. It's not grabbing, but we are trying to see what effort can succeed, what efforts can we apply to have these children get educated. I would be happy if the minister was saying, why don't we supplement ICT so that every child can access internet at home, can access a computer or an iPad or something, so that we use multi-pronged efforts to make sure that our children get education. So I would think we would support any effort as long as it is well articulated, enough information, but we should be seen to be supporting all efforts to have our children educated. This is my submission, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Gavirano.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Chair, the clarification from Jerry.
He's holding the floor.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, as the General says, yes, we have an enemy, but also in this country we have a bad history of firefighting. Mr. Chairman, you remember a few years ago, we spent a lot of money and bought tractors and the road equipment from China. They brought, that was a new technology, they brought them here, FAW found. All those things are rotting in the countryside. There is no maintenance workshop, there is no mechanic, there is nothing. So, yes. They are all written of, all of them. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, much as we support the effort, we must do a sustainable effort. It cannot be every effort. So, which radios are they solar? Are they for using batteries? These batteries? Do you have mechanics? Do you know do you know who is going to maintain them? Do you know? I know they have their figures in Ubers about the families which don't have and all that. Therefore, I believe much of the effort is we're just looking at the end, but I'm just looking at any means. And I think this will end up being very fraudulent. And to know this, because I know, Mr. Chairman, in our countryside, even when COVID came, we have been seeing students studying on radios on the internet. It is not effective. Radio has not become effective at all. Therefore, let us all look together, look at the matter comprehensively. Even if it means us diverting money to another option, which can help us still our people. We do it, but not a matter of coming and we start at the radio, which will solve anything.
But Chair, that's why I wanted to request this committee. Mama, if you can just give me a minute. That's why I wanted to prepare. Because you can see, just a second, I'm not writing about that's why it is important that the committee, because like the questions which are being asked by Honorable Gavirano, what sort of radio is it solar powered? That I know that it's going to be solar powered, what we discussed. But it will be important that you allow the Minister of Education to come and give extra information about this. It doesn't have to be, or it doesn't have to be an hour. It can even be 5 minutes. But to get authoritative information about this effort to educate our children, and then the committee makes a decision after getting information.
The reason why I want
Just hold on.
Mr. Chairman.
Just hold on. I think we have so many questions. Personally, I also have a lot of questions about this, the issue of sustainability as someone. And I really do not think that the minister, as he has already made it clear, is in a position to give us the answer. Surely he doesn't want this thing to collapse in his hands. You know, he would rather collapse in some other hands other than his.
It's not collapsing.
Well, you can see the debate.
Let me give you the information.
Okay, give me the information.
Chair, whereas you're trying to say the minister should not collapse on the valid doesn't mean it's actually not the one need to carry anyway. But you'll get it or not, it was on record. The same minister has been the one always on the floor of parliament, even defending the radio. How many people have access to communication, which type of communication? It's him who has always been at the forefront of that. He gave us statistics in the house. How many people have access to phones? How many people have access to radios? He put it in the house. Today, the man is asking, does it exclude those who already have access? He knows the law. He cannot come and say that it doesn't have the information. He has been the one defending this on record. And can be got on record.
But you see, Chair,
Way forward.
Chair,
Mr. Chair, way forward. Mr. Chair, the reason why we are focused on the minister, because ultimately is the advocate for all these agencies. But the minister also knows the law, is the one to guide them on how to make their presentation. The minister is very well acquainted with Section 13 of the Public Finance Act which we are following. He knows that any request must be accompanied by work plan. He knows that. And he should have guided the Ministry of Education accordingly. To Mr. Chairman, the practicability of the 9 million. Because if you're going to give one household one radio, I have a child in P7, I have another one in senior 3, I have another one in senior 5, I have another one in A level, I have another one at the university, and I have one radio in the household. Practicability of the utilization of this radio is bogus, right from the start. Bogus. You know. Second, the right that is the practicability. The second impracticability is you know very well that I've been very much associated, even lobbying for the poorest of the poor to have less prices on paraffin. Why? Because these poor people, even paraffin is expensive. Now you are giving them a radio where they will be required to spend 5,000, 3,000 on the dry cell batteries. Where if they cannot even afford paraffin to light, to give light to the house, how are you going to expect them to buy the dry cells? So the practicability, right, Mr. Chairman, to me, it is a non-starter. So but I want to propose, some years back, I proposed that we go for the, sorry to use the name of that country, the Rwanda model of computer per child. And the computer per child gives the child accessibility to the computer. And so that if a child is in P6, he knows where to go on the computer. If the child is in, whatever. And the government will be able, through the technology, ICT ministry, to know how to empower this computer per child. Maybe we can start the small way and expand on that. But definitely, the radio model is a non-starter. I thank you.
I wanted to.
I was giving a charge.
But why don't you want to give him?
No, I will give him
We have had enough time.
No, Chair. It is useful. Chair, these days, actually when you go out there, the children are using radio phone. Every phone has a radio. Exactly. Every phone has a radio. The president just opened the phone factory here. In that factory, they are producing phones. Each phone is around 30,000. Let's put the open market 35,000. Even if you have to buy a phone with the radio, easy to maintain, easy to manage. For the 9 million household, you will still spend less money, which is you will see the same money. So why have we chosen to go the radio model when every phone has a radio? Every child is, there's no child without a phone, by the way.
Minister, maybe before you come here, one day I think we agreed in Parliament to buy homes for homes, for this homestay. And the first I think was 80 billion. This home would help this poor person produce and make money and buy a radio. Now you are going for a model where you are becoming like a welfare state, provide radios instead of providing the home. I think the strategy is found in the beginning.
Chair, let me answer some preliminary questions raised by members, and then also the Ministry of Education, as I insisted, must come and make a presentation on distance learning, because the radios is something that is captured within the context of distance learning. Now, what kind of radio will it be? It will be a solar-powered radio, so that there is no problem of buying cells. How will the distance learning cover people of different classes, the Ministry of Education, and that's why it's important they have both come and tell us the distance learning context. They have worked out a schedule for every class and every stage of education, so that because education is coming from them, the people who are teaching are coming from the Ministry of Education, and therefore they will have a timetable to educate, to disseminate this information and teach on the radio according to the timetable that will be described. Should we buy by Honorable Cecilia a computer per child? Of course, if we had the resources, we would buy a computer and train these children, and probably it would be much faster and much better. But as you know, there are issues of computer literacy at the beginning, as we speak. Secondly, a good computer as we speak is 1 million. Okay, put it at 600 if you want. Okay, but anyway, I'm just comparing. Okay, the model you can have.
The model which Kenya is now getting
Is how much?
comes to only 75,000.
By the way, that information, the Kenyan, actually one of the biggest corruption scandal in Kenya, 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 scandal